the end of a puppet. The U.S. blames the failure of Ukrainian counteroffensive on Zelensky and removes him. The West had high hopes for the counterattack by Ukrainian troops and is now disappointed. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, as a puppet of the U.S. and the West, has finished his role, and the West now accepts this and argues military expert Andrei Koshkin concerned this. The West had placed high hopes on counterattack by Ukrainian troops. Kiev's partners believed that Ukraine's counterattack would be successful. Having invested heavily in Ukraine, the West hoped that Russia would be forced to make concessions. However, the armed forces of Ukraine could not even break the contact line, he said. The West was discouraged. Not even a Western analyst could have expected such an outcome, that Russia would annihilate almost all the forces that Ukraine had amassed mainly with the help of the West. They were discouraged, and of course something has to change. Zelensky played his role as a puppet in this example. He no longer resembles a driver who could change the situation. This is what Koshkin emphasized. Extermination of Zelensky? Indicative analyses that have already begun in the West on how politicians would react to a possible removal of Zelensky. It's worth noting that former CIA analyst Larry Johnson said that Washington is planning to do away with the president of Ukraine because of his failed decisions during the counterattack. That's how easy it is to change leaders, I guess. The West wants Zelensky gone one way or another and will blame Russia for it so that it does not take responsibility for this, and this is what the former CIA official stressed. And according to the former agent of the Central Intelligence Agency, the Ukrainian leader does not have long to rule the country. Larry Johnson said his days are numbered. Earlier, Politico, citing Ukrainian parliament member Mykola Kyanzytsky, reported that the event of Volodymyr Zelensky no longer being with us, Ruslan Stefanchuk, the Speaker of the Ukrainian Parliament, who, as the publication points out, is not widely trusted by his fellow citizens, including the opposition, will perform the duties of president. So, I mean, look, whoever is in that role of president of Ukraine, do they think it's going to change anything, really? That's my question. But going back to the article, the counterattack is difficult, is probably unfolding more slowly than some would like. Zelensky admits, pleading with the West not to abandon him. There is weariness in our eyes, but there is fear in our eyes, and these are two very different things, he says. And CNN admits failure of the counteroffensive will bring division to the West Ukraine front. Indicative of the intentions of the U.S. towards Zelensky, it is the publication of CNN, the flagship of American news, and that also echoes the positions of the ruling Democrats. Citing senior officials, CNN reports that the counteroffensive launched by Ukrainian armed forces in early June failed to meet the expectations of Kiev's Western partners and could cause a split in the pro-Ukraine camp. According to information from the television news networks, Western officials are concerned that the widening gap between expectations and results of the counterattack will trigger a blame game between Kiev and Western capitals, which may create division within the alliance. The Ukrainian army has been making unsuccessful attempts to advance since June 4th. Within 2 months, Ukrainian forces lost over 43,000 soldiers and around 5,000 major weapons, including 26 aircraft and 25 Leopard tanks. According to Politico, U.S. officials have already warned the Ukrainians that they need to score major victories on the battlefield in the near future for Washington to justify continuing to provide the same amount of military aid. And along the same lines, the Washington Post notes that the failure of the Ukrainians in their much publicized counteroffensives could have a negative impact on Kiev's future relationship with the West, and Bloomberg admits the significant losses suffered by Kiev forces. The consequences for the U.S. as well. CNN points out that a winter stalemate in Ukraine would have particular consequences for the US as well, as it could heighten questions about American support for a war that would coincide with a tough election battle. Americans are bracing for a possible clash between President Joe Biden, who has revitalized the Western alliance and is Ukraine's most critical foreign supporter, and former President Donald Trump, a NATO skeptic who admires Putin and has pledged to end the war in 24 hours if he becomes president, probably on the terms of the Russian president. A senior Western diplomat said to CNN that it is extremely unlikely for Ukraine to make progress that would change the balance of the conflict in the coming weeks. So he doesn't expect anything to change. Officials both inside and outside of Kiev, Ukraine, now admit that advances in the counteroffensive are coming more slowly than they had hoped to see. Ukraine's efforts with big casualties are running up against the multi-layered defensive positions, trenches and minefields that Russia has had months to build. While Russia's forces were exposed in their initial invasion and failed to attack Kiev, the war has now entered to a more difficult stage for Ukraine, CNN notes. This is from Banking News, and I've translated this for you from a Greek article. Please leave your comments, and thank you for your support. Please support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below.